Hello everyone, good afternoon, good evening. This is Mubashir Sargana. I'm the moderator for this session. We have got two esteemed speaker, domain experts. The topic of our session is cybersecurity and user perspectives and cross-border cooperation, a very interesting topic. I hope you all will enjoy. Our distinguished speakers are Ramanjit Chima. Ramanjit Chima serves as Senior International Counsel and Asia Pacific Director at Access Now, working with international not-for-profit organizations, team of global public policy staff in protecting an open internet and advancing the rights of users. Our other speaker is Nicole Chan, an attorney at law, board of directors, member board of directors of Asia, vice chair at Digital Transformation Association, professor at School of Law of College of Social Sciences, National Chengxi University, as well as many distinguished positions in the area of law and technology. Okay, we have got our other speaker as well. Let me just provide him. Okay, so without any wait or delay, we will go to our first speaker, Nicole Chan. Nicole, you will be having a maximum 15 minutes for your presentation. Please share your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. It's my great pleasure to be here right now. Would you please share my slides for me? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, hello everyone. I'm Nicole Chen from Taiwan. I'm the former chairperson of National Communications Commission of Taiwan. Today I'm going to use 15 minutes to talk about the cybersecurity and user perspectives and cross-border cooperation. This topic is very important, especially followed by the topic, the last section, the digital economy. Next. Okay. The Global Risk Report 2020 from WEF. According to the reports, we can see at least 3 main risks related to cybersecurity. Today, more than 50% of the world's population is now online. Approximately 1 million people go online for the first time each day, and 2/3 of the global population own a mobile device. While digital technology is bringing tremendous economic and social benefits to much of the global population, issues such as unequal access to the internet, the lack of a global technology governance framework, and cyber insecurity all pose significant risk. Geopolitical and geoeconomic uncertainty, including the possibility of fragmented cyberspace, also threaten to prevent the full potential of next-generation technologies from being realized. Respondents to WEF's survey related information infrastructure breakdown as the 6th most impactful risk in the year until 2030. The cyber attacks infrastructure and the cyber attacks theft of money and data are in the respondents expecting risk to increase in 2020. And the data fraud or theft and the cyber attacks are in the risk by likelihood and impact over the next 10 years. Next, please. Next page, please. Yeah. And cybersecurity laws, orders, regulations. No matter in North America, Europe, and Central Asia, and East Asia and Pacific, we can see laws, orders, regulations increased significantly. Next, please. And related to the global trades on cybersecurity governance. If we use the cybersecurity governance as the search terms, we can see also the trends is increasing. Yeah, next please. Cybersecurity governance versus internet governance. If we see the structure, we can see the structure similarities between internet governance and the cybersecurity governance. These are transnational scope of governance required, global technical compatibility required, distributed responsibility, private sector led. But we can also see there are key differences between internet governance and the cybersecurity governance. There's no centralized point of governance, less need for uniformity, less need for global coordination, and need for criminal sanction. Next, please. So how is cyberspace regulated? According to the Dr. Lessing from Harvard University, how lives of individuals are regulated by 4 forces: the law, social norms, the market, and architecture. He identified these 4 forces that constrain our actions. The law threatens sanction if it is not obeyed. Social norms are enforced by the community. Markets, through supply and demand, set a price on various items or behaviors. The final force is the architecture. The code and other laws of cyberspace theory raised by Dr. Lessing can be seen as the theory of regulation and has been popularized by Lessing's subsequent usage of it in the context of regulation of the internet. The key difference in regulation of internet compared the regulation of the real world is the fact that architecture of the internet, the computer code that underlies all software, is created by humans. Whereas in the real world, much of the architecture based on laws of physics, biology, and major social and cultural forces is beyond our control. Next, please. So cybersecurity, internet policy reference framework. We can see different framework model of ICANN, ITU, IGF, APNIC, TWNIC, IETF, NATO. So from the characteristic including multiple stakeholder, bottom of model of governance, standard setting, operates based on contractual, compliance, governmental, set internationally enforceable obligations for states. I think those frameworks we are familiar. Next, please. Other referenced areas of international law. Areas of international law that can be used for reference with regard to protecting the core of the internet include law of the sea, air law, space law, international human rights law, international telecommunications regulatory, law of treaties, international trade law, anti-terrorist laws and policies. Next. We can also see so many multilateral accords. I don't want to go to details for this page and next page. Next, please. There are also other bilateral accords. Yeah, okay, this page. Right now, we can see the UNGGE, UN Group of Governmental Experts. The UNGGE is a UN mandated working group in the field of information security. 5 working groups were established since 2004. The UNGGE can be credited with 2 major achievements: outlining the global cybersecurity agenda and introducing the principle that international law applies to the digital space. Next, please. So we can see the transforming from code is law is code, and cyber norms. There are many internal interaction between 4 forces those are law, market, architecture, and norms. Next, please. Concerning about norm, we can see from the critical internet resources, norms mean the appropriate behavior, especially in the internet, the cyberspace. Different organizations, including IETF, RI, RIS, ICANN, IANA, NRO, etc., are responsible for policy, oversight, implementation, and keep the internet maintained operating. Next, please.
Nicole, you have got 2 minutes to wrap up.
Okay, cybersecurity and internet governance. So besides the organization rules, we have to consider about the jurisdiction law, international treaty, and the internet governance. Next, please. And right now, we are facing other challenges, which is the fragmentation of the internet. We can see the US raised the clean network policy, and China raised another new IP proposal. Next, please. Next, please. Next, please. I'll skip that one. I'll skip this one. Next, please. Next, yeah, good. Seeking address why cyber attacks are so difficult to trace back to hackers. Yeah, because they are invasive attacks on a much regular basis, but IP address unknown. Next, please. Only when we can identify IP address, then we can clarify the cyber attribution. No jurisdiction, no authority, no law enforcement. Next, please. This case is from Taiwan. 95.9% cases unsolved, and this happened in other countries as well. Next, please. We can see different approaches are tried to solve the issues, including the multiple legal assistance treaties, conventions on cybercrime, and the legal cooperation. Next, please. Next, please. We can see the multiple stakeholders model and the cyber sovereignty model, and in between, there are some countries, they are trying to use the limitation intervention model as well. Next, please. Which model will prevail? Multiple stakeholder model or cyber sovereignty model? Next, please. The last one, the last page. Way forward. As to criminal, access to 21st century technology at a very low to no cost. As to the law enforcement, settled with 19th century law with 20th century technology. Both technological tools and the legal tools have to be updated for policies and the National Security Agency to keep us safe in this context. Next, this is my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Nicole, for finishing on time. That's really good. Next, Ramanjit, please, you will be sharing your own screen. Please go ahead.
I will be.
Thank
Just
you.
a quick check to see, can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, sure. Loud and clear.
Great. I'm just going to share. 1 second. There you go.
Raman, you will be having 15 minutes for your presentation.
Perfect. Just to check, can you all see my screen properly? Is it coming?
Yeah, sure.
Super. Thank you all. And many of my comments will build on the excellent presentation that Nicole has given you around the sort of cyber threat environment we are seeing, as well as the discussions we're seeing on the normative and legal landscape. If at any point of time, if anything I say is unclear, please feel free to drop a note in chat so the moderators and others can let me know. But with that, I'll kick off. And the focus of my discussion here is to bring it a bit back to what are the individual user concerns when it comes to some of these global cybersecurity discussions. And my flag to everyone, my warning in a sense, is that it is very good to be cautious as well as considered when you engage with cyber policy. One of the challenges often is that the term cyber is being used to cover nearly everything that might be there in technology, law, and policy, whereas cyber security discussions tend to be a little bit more focused, or at least many people who work in that space would like it to be around the focus around security of ICT systems, networks, products, and services with a focus on the user. And perhaps that's what we always need to bring. So when you hear a policymaker bring up an issue about cyber policy and what they want to do, maybe it's good to start ask them very specifically, or even yourself, what is it that you specifically want to talk about? And is it genuinely a more security focused issue? Um, and even when you're looking at security, it's important to remember, is it really improving the security of individual users? For example, today itself, as we're doing this presentation, this is made possible thanks to the technology of products like Zoom, but also the different telecom networks and others in between. And the focus of cybersecurity policy and of all of those people who work in that sector should be about protecting the individuals who are part of this. You and me being able to access this without fear of our data being breached, our communication being intercepted, it being simple and easy to use. That's really the focus that cybersecurity policy and cybersecurity lawmaking efforts need to have. And unfortunately, that's not often the case. What you often see instead is cybersecurity sometimes being used by governments, and Nicole touched upon or hinted at this a bit in her presentation, sometimes as a mechanism to restrict rights. What is one person's cybersecurity approach is in fact very often element of political control, or if not political control by a particular government, it might have unforeseen consequences where there's a desire to do something, but it actually results in people being prohibited from doing certain things or being forced to do certain things that harm security. The best example of that is how often lots of cybercrime laws are sometimes passed with the intention of preventing cybercrime, but the broad criminal provisions they create are actually often used to target people who a government, either a federal government or state or provincial law enforcement actors or others, don't like. Activists, journalists, even security researchers themselves. Because remember, a lot of what you see as security research, the finding of vulnerabilities and bugs and other elements in systems, very often involves having to check networks, run tests, do penetration testing, do other mechanisms. And those often can be sometimes construed as hacking by more, if you were taking a more aggressive, conservative approach. And ironically, what you end up then with is cybersecurity laws as well as cybercrime laws that instead of making it better for security researchers, the people who are trying to make systems operate, they are actually being used to persecute them and harass them. And the examples of this globally, Nicaragua is one great example. It passed law recently that's arguably meant to be preventing cybercrime, but maybe everyone regards it as an example of political repression and of control. You've seen other examples in this region, and perhaps I can be a little bit more controversial by naming them. For example, in Bangladesh, the Digital Security Act that has been passed there is regarded by most human rights groups as being a assault on fundamental rights, but also not really helping improving cybersecurity. So these are examples of things that we need to be cautious about. The other thing, the reality of what is today's cyber environment is that cyberspace and has been militarized. There is an incredible explosion of cyber offensive operations. The graphic you see here is an example of like what's regarded as one of the world's first really very well documented cyber offensive operations against an entire country. And when that happens, you see all levels of civilian activity, all elements of civil society also facing issues. Because, and this was several years ago, that is the Estonia attack back in 2007, 2008. And what you see today is that with the pandemic and other situation, the other increased rush for digitization caused by the political events of today, nearly every element of society depends on digital tools and mechanisms. And what that means is that the fact that governments across the world and their militaries are regarding cyberspace and the internet more broadly as another sphere for military operation is concerning. That doesn't mean by itself the fact that that militaries are thinking about cyberspace is a bad thing. But the fact that they think it's a genuine, regular space for military operation is something we should be concerned by, because this is not just about what militaries and governments do to each other, but it's what happens to us, internet users in between. And the reality is that what this has revealed is that a lot of these moves, often on the grounds of cybersecurity or relating to cybersecurity, are undermining free speech, freedom of speech and expression, as well as the openness of the internet as a whole. And what you're seeing often is that the government institutions involved in cybersecurity often are sometimes taking problematic decisions. You've seen that from the Snowden revelations, you've seen that from other revelations, where the people who work on cybersecurity, who are supposed to improve encryption policy or do other matters like that, actually have another motivation behind that as well. They sometimes do want to access systems more. They want to be able to collect malware, use malware for their political purpose. But ironically, that weakens the security of systems as a whole. I've talked about this a bit. I want to go to what we therefore need to do is focus on cybersecurity laws and policies with a focus on the individual. And that's very important that you see more conversation across stakeholders, but more specifically, that cybersecurity is not regarded as a sector where human rights considerations don't come into play. It's in fact even more important for human rights considerations to be brought up when you're looking at proposed cybersecurity measures or cooperation or other steps in this regard. From the perspective of my team, and Access Now, we're an international nonprofit organization that looks at digital rights and more broadly human rights in the digital age. Our approach to cybersecurity policy, and I'll just note here, we're both advocates of cybersecurity policy. We're also users and developers of it. We run a digital security helpline that any activist, journalist globally can access and reach and get free assistance from, whether they've been victims of cyber attacks, to proactive security, guidance and counseling, to simple things like how to use encrypted messaging platforms and other services. But our approach, therefore, to cybersecurity has been that you need three elements there. You need cybersecurity policies to be user-centric, focusing on the individual really, and not just for large systems, large companies, militaries, and other these large actors you sometimes see. It does need to focus on protecting the individual. You need these policies to be systemic. That means organized, structured clearly. You know what relates to whom. If a cyber attack happens or if you see incidents occur, which actor responds to it at what point of time, with what legal powers, with what executive resources, with what budget, should be clear and built out there. You don't need quick solutions. You don't need speeches. You don't need scrambling to respond. You need systemic solutions. And more importantly, that these discussions should not be closed door. They should be products of open and plural discussion processes. You should have it discussed openly in national parliaments, in the public, with engagement, with discussion, because you need everyone to be on board. And also in cybersecurity, you need expertise from every layer of the stack, from security technologists in companies to telecommunications engineers to journalists and people who provide them security assistance to human rights activists and others. They all need to be there. And this is not something that's not getting attention. This, what I put here is a quick snapshot of a statement from the Freedom Online Coalition, a group of governments who are focused on protecting online free speech and other values, but who often work on a range of different topics. And what they came out with in the early part of this year was a reiteration, a new statement on the impact of the approach that's needed in cybersecurity policies to protect human rights. And as you can see, this is the stress of what they say. And I urge you all to absorb this and see nationally as well as regionally how we can do this better. That cybersecurity is not just about the security of assets and information. It's sometimes very tempting to make it a nearly compliance asset management approach. No, it is about the sort of law, policy, philosophies, and how they impact individuals. On the same side, a lack of a secure internet also puts people at risk. So you need to be able to take these measures there. And that's the focus there. So security should be done to protect individuals in a manner that respects human rights. For example, how you protect the right to privacy. If a cyber incident occurs, what sort of information is collected and shared? Does it respect how a country regulates its intelligence and law enforcement services? Does it only involve information that is required, whose collection is necessary and proportionate under international law, for example? And the idea that sometimes is put across that cybersecurity policy and human rights law and user-centric interests are somehow in conflict must be dispelled. Actually, they are mutually reinforcing. And therefore, I give a couple of suggestions about the areas that we should be focusing on. One, you should be looking at the national as well as regional cybersecurity laws, model laws, proposals, or even policy documents that come out there, and ensure that when they are addressing issues of cybersecurity cooperation, for example, the creation of incident response teams, their legal powers, the creation of new cybercrime prevention agencies, cybercrime offenses, cybercrime punishments, that these are actually done in a manner that protect human rights and due process. They should not be disproportionate. If investigation has to be done, it should respect the right to privacy and the international human rights law that is provided that helps guide how you use such powers. You need to ensure that measures to address cybercrime and cybersecurity don't unnecessarily penalize or punish actors. For example, not just journalists and human rights activists, but also security researchers and other cybersecurity professionals whose cooperation is critical to make cybersecurity work well. The other area you need to be looking at is how cross-national cybersecurity and cybercrime coordination is happening. Nicole again pointed and talked a bit about that in terms of, for example, the mutual legal assistance treaty process and others. For example, the reality is today in today's network in internet, a cyber incident or cybercrime is rarely only in one jurisdiction. It often involves access to cloud services or other platforms, which are often, more often than not, often located in the United States, in Europe, in other developed countries, or even in Asia Pacific. You have companies who will have data centers and employees scattered across multiple locations. How do you go about that? Countries have traditionally had arrangements, including sometimes mutual legal assistance treaties between states, that allow legal requests from one country to be easily processed by law enforcement or courts in another country, or by platforms or companies in another country, in order to ensure that law enforcement gets the assistance they need. There have been a lot of complaints that this is slow, this is unworkable. There are lots of radical ideas that you sometimes see as attempts to fix this. And that's why you need to also be cautious. Some of these radical solutions or attempts to make the system better actually will place individuals at risk. The small slide and blurb I give you here is from a wider paper that colleagues of mine wrote at Access Now around mutual legal assistance treaties and their improvement. And that's what we address here, that any solution or improvements on this process of mutual legal assistance should be designed around focusing to improve efficiency on lawful government requests. And lawful is important because, unfortunately, a lot of government requests are not always lawful. It should reduce incentives for governments to be able to interfere with tech platforms and networks. It should provide clarity for users, governments, and companies on how user data is being treated. And it must be focused on protecting user rights. Just because you improve a mutual legal assistance treaty doesn't mean if I'm an Indian citizen, if I'm a US citizen, or a citizen of another location in the Asia Pacific region, that the protections afforded to me by national constitution and by the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights is not abridged. I should know who's accessing it, that it's restricted, that it's being done carefully. And again, it's important to remember
Raman, please wrap up.
these are not abstract concerns. These are concerns that have happened due to government abuse. The last element, which I'm going to leave you with, which Nicole touched upon a little bit, is that there have been international discussions around how states conduct cyber offensive operations. And there's a lot of jockeying that's happening there, geopolitical tension. We need to make sure that that tension is not just around those interests, that it advances systemic solutions. And there are two areas here that I would advise you all to monitor carefully. One is the fact of how international law applies to what states do online, which is what's happening through the UN First Committee process around this group of governmental experts in the UN Open-Ended Working Group. And I welcome more discussions on that in the Q&A, as well as in the UN Third Committee, where there's been a proposal for a new cybercrime treaty. And sometimes we should ask, is a new cybercrime treaty a good thing? Will it protect user interests, or may it perhaps be a way that some governments or sometimes even some law enforcement agencies lower rights overall? And those are some of the considerations there. I'm going to pause and now end so that we can take more questions in Q&A. And I encourage you to be aggressive and to ask us hard questions.
Thank you so much, Raman, for a very insightful presentation. Actually, I would like to inform participants that Nicole shared two slides of multilateral accords and bilateral accords that she skipped. We will be sharing the presentation, and you should go through that. I recommend that you should go through those lists and study those accords, because that will be very helpful. For me, a cooperation between states is on cybersecurity in cyberspace is it's essential in order to combat cross-border cybercrimes. And yes, it will actually reduce the risk of interstate cyber war that can happen as a result if governments doesn't involve actively to stop. And yes, now we will go to our participants. They have got some questions. I'll go through the chat first. There are some questions in the chat. First question is for Nicole. It's from Dayanidhi Krishna. With prohibitive costs, what is your suggestion on bringing about effective cybersecurity measures in small and medium enterprises?
Yeah, I think due to the cyber crime and the cyber securities issue are related to the cross-border issue. So I think no matter the country is big or small, I think they are facing the same situation. So I think the good approach is try to collaborate internationally. So join the discussion with the global organization, or the try to find the collaborate with other countries. I think that will be the good approach. Yeah.
There is some extended question. There are several challenges in enforcing cyber law in the form of law enforcement, etc., which hasn't easy on cross-border crime. Are there new positive trends that you are observing?
Yeah, it is not easy. Yeah. For the recent development, we can see even the courts they found the problems and the issues, but there are, for the time being, there are no clear resolution and the solution. So I think we can only keep going and try to as in my presentation, I have raised some accords and the treaties concerning about the cybersecurity, but there is no clear solution for the time being. So, internationally discuss about the issue is the trend. So we can observe that and ask our government to join the discussion. Yeah.
Thank you, Nicole. Next question is from Yikowai.
Sorry, should I just give a quick 15
yeah, sure,
second
please.
supplement to that? I think it's also very important as a positive trend to note that you actually see a lot of joint investigations and joint prosecution activities by governments across the last 2-3 years. And that itself is a major achievement. So when people say nothing is happening, no, actually it is. Governments are talking to each other, using the mutual legal assistance treaties, jointly investigating matters on cybercrime and doing things. Obviously, that doesn't always help on the more politically controversial issues, particularly cyber offensive operations, for example, one state targeting another. Even there you see joint action, joint response, but that's much more political. And there's a lot of debate and accusations flying from both sides. Arguably, a lot of it from Russia, China against Western bloc states, saying that you are trying to harass and target us, and from Western states and others saying, no, well, you're targeting our systems. But you are seeing joint collaboration, so things are happening.
Thank you, Raman. Though Raman and Nicole has already addressed the question that has been raised by Yikowai, I'll just go through that question. How do we achieve consensus meaningfully and effectively on a standard for cybercrime issues? The current status quo is too individual, nation focused. Any of you?
Nicole, would you like to go first?
Yeah, I think you go first. You can answer it. Yeah, you first.
So one thing is
directly.
that yes, you will not always. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go directly.
I'll say that the problem. One thing you must remember is that yes, there will be some differences always on cybercrime issues, but that is also because nations approach crimes in different ways. What's a crime in India may not always be a crime, for example, in Taiwan, in Malaysia, in Singapore, and that is a reality, and that's not something new. Any criminal lawyer will tell you that because our societies are different in some ways. You do see common certain cybercrime measures that are there. You also see model treaties on that, and that's one important thing to remember. There already exists one instrument that a lot of states are signatories to, which is the Council of Europe Convention on the Prevention of Cybercrime, often regarded as the Budapest Convention, which now has a lot of non-Council of Europe signatories as well. And there are already common agreements there. But beyond that, you also see cybercrime treaties at the regional level in Africa. You see even sometimes from the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, statements on common cybercrime measures. So those will help there. Will you see always a consistent global approach on that? I am more skeptical. There is a proposal in the UN for an international cybercrime treaty, which in fact many people think is problematic, because what is a cybercrime in one state might actually be repression of free speech in another state?
Yeah, this issue is very controversial. For example, the hate speech. In some countries, hate speech is illegal, but maybe in American or other countries, the criteria is totally different because of the protection of expression of freedom, something like that. So I think all we can do is as Raman said, mentioned that just join the discussion about the of the international convention or treaty, no matter multilateral or bilateral. So I think that things are happening and are developing in this direction. Yeah, let's make our efforts to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, Raman and Nicole. The other question that has been directly addressed to Raman, be asked by Rakesh, but question is about how artificial intelligence and machine learning are supporting security. Please respond briefly.
In short, you'll see a lot of cybersecurity solutions that make use of machine learning to give insights about the number of attacks platforms and others see. You see a lot of embedding of cybersecurity, flagging and filtering mechanisms in networks, sometimes even at the telecom company level or the network stack level of companies that warn by using machine learning to see mass number of attacks, notice patterns. And what you see globally is a lot of tools that now small and medium enterprises that can subscribe to for a small payment or even a larger annual payment or whatever, that gives them access to stuff that only big companies would have had based on machine learning tools and others that are now available to lots of parties.
Thank you, Raman. And an added question by the Rakesh Bhatt as well. How globalization 4.0 impacts on cybersecurity?
I'd be honest, I don't know what globalization 4.0 is. So Nicole,
I think it's about, I think he might be asking about industrial revolution 4.0, maybe. We can just go to the next question. How to balance, it's by the couple Goel, how to balance national security and cybersecurity under IT Act 2000 in the context of internet shutdown? Raman, you can
I think
respond.
that's very important to just quickly address, because he said in the context of internet shutdowns, the phenomenon of internet shutdowns, which is the intentional disruption of internet access in a geography or entire country, is very concerning and problematic. It's definitely a concern in this region. Asia Pacific has some of the highest number of internet shutdowns in the world, unfortunately, largely due to India, as well as occasionally by Bangladesh, Pakistan, and occasionally Indonesia. And an internet shutdown is never good for cybersecurity. You switch off access to critical tools. It is not an effective cybersecurity intervention. So it's not even a good national security intervention, in my view. And also domestically, for law and order, there's great research out from Stanford University. Jan Reisdak, an academic there, who's noted that internet shutdowns never actually help prevent incitement to violence or help improve social order. They, in fact, are often a threat to it. So we need to be cautious. But from a cybersecurity level, find me a cybersecurity engineer who says an internet shutdown is a good thing, and I will buy you a meal. I never found one who said that so far.
Thank you, Raman. Our next question from Ahita Gangavar, who is to Raman. As we look forward to the national security strategy of India, do you think it's important to have an act? What, according to you, should be the focus points for this act? Raman, you are muted.
Sorry, I said I actually had a separate presentation on this from previous discussions and research, which is what I've put in here. I think you might be able to see it. But I'm trying to be very brief. India's refreshed cybersecurity strategy, which is now many months late, should come out. Some of these measures may require further legal amendments and clarification, but this is what you need. You need clarity on who does what in India on cybersecurity. You don't have that right now. I believe any strategy on this, even if it's not a law, should go through parliament. You should get parliamentary approval or onboarding, because political consensus behind this is very critical. And you need also clarity on which bodies have legal powers. For example, we have a cybersecurity coordinator today that doesn't really have any clear legal authority, and how others can work with it is not clear. And you do need to make sure anything that happens on Indian cybersecurity matches the data protection bill, which has to be passed. They should not be in conflict with each other. That's again a best practice in learning from other countries. But detailed notes, I can try and pull out this slide and send it across as well.
Thank you, Raman. Though the next question by Abdullah Afzal Raja has been already addressed somehow, but I will just read out his question. As the norms and sensitivities are vary a lot across the borders, what are your views on the future of policy making in the cybersecurity domain? Nicole and Raman, you both can address this question.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned in my presentation, I think in the cybersecurity governance, we can not only see the law, we can also see the market, the architecture, and the norms. I think yeah, because norms are the appropriate behaviors in the internet, and from technical. In the past few years, we can see many norms accepted in the internet society. So I think we can put more efforts to discuss about the norms. Yeah, because of the legislation is very slow and difficult, no matter in any countries. Especially right now, we are trying to seek the international legislation. It is quite impossible. So I think we can make our efforts to discuss and looking forward to the solution about the law. And I noticed another question is about GDPR. Yes, in some sense I agree with the point about attendee raised. Yeah, the GDPR from European Commission's point of view, it's kind of make the law as a code. So I think maybe that is another approach. The EU try to use this kind of solution from a human rights point of view, and enforce other countries to follow the rules. So it's a kind of yeah, to make the law as a code. Maybe we can pay attention about this trend.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Raman. This has been really interesting session. There are questions coming up. We are out of time. So we'll share the contact details of the speakers. You can just email them your queries, and hopefully they will respond back.